Hello, everyone, and thank you for joining us today. My name is Robert Stickle. I'm also joined by my colleague Jim Patterson. Jim will be today's presenter and will discuss the topic of integrating Jira and Azure DevOps into a comprehensive product portfolio management solution. This webinar is a new addition to our series of product portfolio management videos, so if you enjoy this webinar, feel free to watch the others we have available on our channel and look towards the next installment, which we'll be releasing soon. And as always, I hope that today's presentation grants you some insights into the world of product and portfolio management and gets you excited for the new developments happening within the industry and here at OnePlan. Thank you again. I'll now turn the presentation over to Jim.
Thanks, Robert, and welcome everybody. Continuing on this whole theme of the marketplace and organizations moving to more of a product orientation rather than the traditional project orientation. We're extending that conversation here to talk about how we incorporate tools like Jira and Azure DevOps from an execution perspective into that overall framework for product portfolio management. So let's get started with that. So what's driving this change? Well, the modern landscape is really introducing new challenges and evolving challenges for organizations. The net result is, though, that the speed at which we innovate and that we're forced to innovate is increasing, and the pace of change is ever increasing, meaning there's more demands and more change that we have to adopt with on a regular basis. We have more demanding customers and higher expectations. They're more educated about the things that are out there. Oftentimes they've done their shopping before they get to us and understand a little bit more about what they need. And as their needs increase and become more complex, they want more out of us. And the demand for simplicity, even though the science and the technology behind a lot of the things that we're providing as far as products and technology gets more complex and more advanced, the app culture really demands that you provide a simple user experience on the front end to consume that and not portray the complexity that goes on behind the scenes. And the rise of the competition. It used to be in a lot of our markets, it took companies with significant assets and size in order to compete and innovate and do the research and development around the things that would compete with us. But now with the advent of cloud technologies and the easy access to those things by even small startup companies, there are more and more companies of more different size that will compete with us. And some of them are smaller and more nimble than we are if we're larger corporations. And then the time to value, we have to really get things to the consumer quicker. They can't wait for long duration projects where they get a lot of capabilities all in one big bang. They need to see value more quickly. That's both our stakeholders internally and the products and or the customers that we have both internally and externally that will consume what we're delivering. And this impacts all parts of the organization, from the executives that have to formulate new strategies, new business models on how to go to market and how to meet the needs of the consumers. The PMOs that have to manage a ever-increasing diverse set of projects across a wider organization that have more technologies involved. Product development here that needs to get involved in managing not just their own individual products or product lines, but being able to coordinate across the entire organization, across product lines, to make sure that any dependencies or duplications or even synergies that they have to be coordinated. And then we have to support those things. So the part of the organization has to support these new innovations as they're rapidly coming out, increases demands on them as well. And this is just part of the organization. It really is about the entire organization and the entire culture. So the challenges here, and the Gartner Group, put out a paper based on a survey that says enterprises investing in digitalization are realizing suboptimal returns from their digital initiatives, not unlike what we saw traditionally from projects in general. And product managers that own the product outcomes will likely focus on their specific initiative without necessarily regarding the integration across other products or product lines in the organization. And then the need and the move to become more agile, we're not really approaching it with a more of a true dedicated agile team to support the product management. It's not really reality yet in organizations, and they're still sharing and begging and borrowing resources across the organization, across teams to make that happen. So some of the things that might make this optimal are still challenges within the organizations. Some of the recommendations that come out of this from the Gartner paper says that, as this momentum increases and we're responsible for evolving program management offices or PMOs, we must adopt more adaptive program management practices, because we have to do a few things. We have to define a shared vision for realizing strategic objectives for the organization, meaning it's not just our product that matters. It's meeting the goals and the vision of the entire organization, and improving coordination and engagement across those products, to mitigate and identify potential collisions across the product roadmap, and making sure that we're synergizing and maximizing our capabilities within the organization. And then just ensuring overall effective orchestration across product delivery by collaborating with other product managers or other teams to proactively address any contention that we might have for resources and other things. So as we evolve to a more product orientation over a more project orientation, it also incorporates more agile approaches to become more responsive. Some of the things we do is we break work into smaller, easier managed pieces and deliver things in smaller chunks. We do it so that we can iterate and get value sooner by delivering things iteratively and adapt to changing conditions more readily, because we're not committing to this longer range thing. We're basically delivering in smaller chunks and shorter horizons, so that as changes hit us, we can adapt to them before the next iteration occurs. And then to do that, organizations must also change their performance management and also transform those types of things in culturally and process and procedural wise to support these new approaches and these new models. So there's some fundamental differences. Some of them in this product versus project models is in how we organize our teams and our resourcing. Instead of us keep piling on work and then trying to allocate resources or teams to them, we have basically dedicated teams that we bring the work to with fixed capacity. We have a different definition of value with a more customer-centric type of approach. We have delivery team metrics that are different than we did in the waterfall days. And even dependency management isn't just precedence logic. Some things have to do with whether or not these are true dependencies, or are they, from a precedence perspective, are they associations, or are they related things? Or are they blockers that we have to resolve? Different perspective on dependency management. And then feedback speed. We're really going out there iteratively and trying to solicit feedback on the things that we are putting out there earlier on, getting feedback from our customer so that we can respond to those things and make sure that we're delivering the right thing. And instead of us just having this big wish list of things that we're going to deliver in this big bang, backlog management prioritization becomes more incremental. And we do this in a more agile approach and prioritize things in a way that delivers the things that are most important to our customers. Overall, just an overall customer centricity. So changing this model is really about changing from those days when we had those huge, sometimes year-long, multi-year-long project plans to deliver a big thing. We're breaking those things in the middle here to smaller chunks or packages. And we're really managing these things according to product roadmaps. We commit to roadmaps, and then we deliver different releases and different features on an ongoing basis according to those roadmaps. And those roadmaps on the right there might represent your different products or your different product lines. And then as we model our portfolio, we define a product structure where we have product families or product lines and different products within those. And then we align those to different stakeholders and customers. We assign dedicated teams to those things so they become experts in those things. They understand fully the needs of the customers and understand the nuances of the product itself. And then the product roadmaps are what we adhere to, and those are our guiding model, so that we budget to those roadmaps. And then instead of budgeting to individual projects per se, we fund a product or a product line, and then we have our incremental features and releases that we take from that budget incrementally over time. So the key is to deliver value sooner. That old waterfall approach with longer term projects, the longer term commitment with a bunch of stuff packed into that is that we fund that all up front, and then we don't realize the value of that until the end, meaning that we're investing the dollars, but we don't get the payoff until much later on. And even then, is it a maybe as to whether we're delivering the right thing? Has the circumstances of the marketplace or the requirements changed while we're working on this long duration project? With this new model, each incremental smaller package delivery delivers value on its own, from the minimum viable product of the initial launch of a certain product to the incremental releases or features that we add on later on. What we're doing is we're investing incrementally, and then we're delivering value incrementally, meaning the expenditure is more commensurate time-wise with when we will realize the value from what's being developed. So some of the benefits of moving from projects to products, one is product teams deliver, as I said, measurable value sooner. And then product roadmaps are a continuous stream of delivery that we have. But as we learn, we can respond. Since we're delivering things and developing things in smaller chunks, if the situation on the ground or in the marketplace changes or the needs of the customer changes, we can respond very quickly, even as soon as the next iteration, instead of trying to reorient a very long duration project. And then with the products, we fix that capacity of that team, as I mentioned, and then make the stakeholders prioritize and the customer prioritize what it is you want to deliver within that fixed capacity, instead of overloading unrealistic expectations and trying to find resources to fit that. And then product teams, since they're dedicated in this model, understand and want to delight their customers because they understand the product, they understand their customers better, and they can respond to their needs and deliver the right thing in the right fashion. Product focus minimizes quality escapes. Since we're delivering incrementally, the changes that we have to regression test against are much more incremental, meaning we don't miss as many things in that testing because not as many things are impacted when we deliver incrementally. And then product teams can flex in size with changing conditions. You may shift teams off of products that maybe aren't doing so well onto things that are emerging, etc. And then product organizations tend to be flatter with fewer overheads. They're less of a hierarchical organization, and that provides efficiencies in and of itself. Overall, it's a cultural change where, the increments that we work with and the language that we use are different. In the old project orientation, we have project plans. In the new product-oriented world, we have product roadmaps and team backlogs. Instead of projects, we have minimum viable products. Instead of earned value management for status, we're looking at burn rates and backlogs and velocities and such. Instead of stage gates, we're looking at continuous delivery and release trains. Once again, fundamental changes that may not happen overnight, but these are the types of things that we can do to help us make us more agile and more responsive in our product development. So overall, we talked about not just focusing on our individual product as a product manager, but from product portfolio management, it's really about developing and implementing a comprehensive and profitable business strategy for our company's entire product line or product lines, and make that as strong as it can possibly be. And it goes way beyond singular product management and day-to-day project management. It's really about understanding the goals and benefits, right, to boost our company's bottom line, but also transform the company from top to bottom so that we're doing things in a way that support the best possible outcomes. Some of the benefits of doing this from a product portfolio management perspective is that we get to evaluate our individual product performances in the context of an entire portfolio. We get to increase efficiencies by working on the right things and applying resources effectively. We can improve our competitive ranking by evaluating and tracking market trends and how they apply to the portfolio as we currently see it, and actually adapt to those changing market trends. Because we have a centralized portfolio of product data, this enables teams and departments to better communicate with one another and have visibility into the things that are being worked on that may impact us as we do our things. And it helps us determine and prepare for risks better. The idea is to make decisions in line with the reality of a product success and also within the constraints that we have as an organization. Now, as we transition this discussion into more solutions and portfolio management software, what are the kind of things that you need in order to make those things happen? Well, you need good data analytics from the data that's in there. You need product roadmap tools to support that roadmap approach. We have to have risk management features so that we can anticipate and manage risk and have contingency plans. We have to have budget tracking and resource allocation. We have to have scheduling of some type. We have to have time tracking potentially. And we have to have portfolio ranking tools so that we can do kind of the what if analysis and prioritization that we talked about earlier on. Now, given I've started talking about certain things that are more agile in nature, and it's growing as far as the predominant approach that people are using out there, waterfall is still out there for some projects and products. There are some hybrid methodologies that are out there, and some people have personalized cherry-picked versions of all that. So we still have to accommodate different methods out there in a more adaptive fashion. And if we look at this, and consolidating this, some organizations that are in that more hybrid mode, right, or a mix of things, they may have different methodologies. They may be still doing some things in a more waterfall fashion. Some may be doing some things in a more iterative or agile fashion. And they may be using a variety of different tools and proliferation of tools. Down below, we show, Azure DevOps and Jira in there, but along that, they might have waterfall tools like, Microsoft Project or some of the things you might do directly in OnePlan. And the key is to roll that up and to have portfolio visibility and management across maybe organizing that portfolio for leadership in products and product lines, and maybe aligning those with strategies and key results of those strategies. The key is that leadership needs to get what they need and the visibility they need to make decisions, and the teams need the right tools in order to execute in an effective fashion at the execution level. Now, this is true even if we're all agile, and different people may be using different tools, and down below we're showing all iterative, and maybe some people are using Azure DevOps in the organization, some people are using Jira for that agile. Some of the stuff may be managed directly in OnePlan, but the thing is, even if everybody's agile, there are some things that have to be coordinated. For example, the teams may be looking at more agile metrics like burn-ups and burn-downs and velocity charts, right? Where leadership may still be looking at the language of the business. They maybe wanting to understand more financial implications, when certain deliveries are going to happen, some things that are more traditional from that perspective. And we're going to show you today how OnePlan can provide that and provide the needs of all of these constituencies and people within your organization through this process. So OnePlan is designed to provide product portfolio management within the context of an overall strategic portfolio management concept. Meaning, as we said, you want to align with the overall company strategies. OnePlan has the ability to have business leaders create those strategic plans within OnePlan and set the course for the entire organization. And they can actually manage that strategic plan right in OnePlan as they execute on it. Now, from a execution perspective, our portfolio products and things that we're executing on, we have tools in there from executing in a variety of fashions, including the use of execution tools like Jira and Azure DevOps. And there may be related associated things for us to make good decisions that our product leaders may have different technologies or different associations that we need to align with. In digital products, there may be applications or platforms. There may be business capabilities that need to be modeled. And those associations may have to be factored in and visualized in order to make the proper decisions. So OnePlan is here to connect that strategy all the way down to the execution level and provide it to you in a product portfolio management context. OnePlan provides you very robust portfolio management capabilities. Portfolio plans, maybe in more traditional list views, maybe with or without some Gantt charts. Portfolio boards for the more agile-oriented people so that we can look at things from a more board perspective, maybe even work with things for program increment planning and other such in a more agile fashion. We even have roadmap views so that we can organize these things to visualize that roadmap very readily as a natural output of this process, let alone the what-if modeling capability that we have in there so that you can evaluate alternatives and actually save scenarios. The resource capacity planning, we all have finite resources. And the idea is, do the plans that we have fit within our ability to deliver those resources and the capacities that we have? And OnePlan provides that consistently across all of your efforts. Financial tracking, if you are interested in tracking the financials around the portfolio elements that you have, we can break those down in the detailed cost categories that you want and even track different cost types like original budgets versus, say, revised forecasts and actuals. You can even forecast benefits and revenue in there as well. Now, from the execution side, that the Jira and the Azure DevOps piece will feed into, OnePlan can do this stuff in and of itself. On the left side, we have a waterfall planner to do more traditional schedules, and on the right side, we have more agile backlog planning and also sprint planning that we can work in a more agile and board fashion on the right-hand side. So these things can be done in OnePlan itself. But as you see below, we do have connectors and integrations with Jira and Azure DevOps, or in order to feed into that if you're continuing to use those tools, or if you have a commitment to those tools that you're falling short from the portfolio management or product portfolio management perspective, which they tend to be a little bit weak on. And the status reporting can become a natural output of having that data all flow into one plan and rolling up to the portfolio level. And even the tracking, having a place where your teams or your resources can actually feedback status on the things that they're working on from a work element perspective and get visibility into things that are going on to the things they're involved in, as well as even report time if you have a timesheet capability that you need to do things like capitalization or chargebacks, et cetera. And then the demand side, there's an intake piece of this where before we even get to the portfolio, there may be ideas and requests that have to come in to the funnel for even consideration before we even think about bringing it into our portfolio of work. And one plan does provide the ability for you to provide that ideation and requesting that you might need and actually analyze those things so that you can actually decide and make criteria-based decisions on what are the next right things for us to work on. We even have the strategic piece such that leadership can actually define their objectives or strategies and the tangible key results that they're looking for from us and the rest of the organization, and then track how we're doing against that plan. Where it applies to us in that product management realm is that while that strategy is now communicated clearly by leadership in this fashion, we can then associate it with our product portfolios and project portfolios such that we can make sure that we're in alignment with those things and factor in the things that are most important to the organization as we make decisions on what to execute on. Now, as those associations become more complex, being able to visualize those complex relationships becomes important. And we're going to show you today how one plan can show you how these products and these strategies can be related to one another and all the other factors that you may want to consider as you decide what is most important and what you should be embarking upon next. And status reporting just becomes a natural output of all this. As we're capturing all this in a central place in one plan, we then can get reporting as a natural output of this without having to make reporting on this a project or a effort or initiative in and of itself, even every reporting or status period. Now, what we're going to show you today is, we talked about one plan being that portfolio management capability, and it will be that. Now, if you have mixed methodologies, one plan can do it all, as I mentioned. But if you're using things like Microsoft Project for your waterfall scheduling, and you're using more Azure DevOps in conjunction with that, say for your agile, you can roll that stuff up together into the portfolio with connected execution into one plan seamlessly as part of your process. That same model holds true if your agile tool is Jira. Now, if you're using multiple agile tools or only one agile tool, that's fine. You can actually even roll up Jira and Azure DevOps or either one of them independently into an overall portfolio management context within one plan. So all these models are relevant. So if you think about this, the execution tools on the right, Azure DevOps and Jira, are pretty good at the agile execution piece. But when you get up above the portfolio line, up above there where you start managing at the portfolio or product line or product level, that's where they tend to need some help. And so, for example, you may actually do all your intake and evaluation of your ideas and requests in your product innovation and decide what you're going to work on over in the one plan realm, in the portfolio management realm. And at the appropriate time, when you decide those, they may align with whatever your backlog structure is over in Azure DevOps or Jira. And that may align with your epics, features, or user stories and the tasks and the bugs you might work on. And then as you work on the execution tool within those pieces, they will feed back the relevant current data back to the portfolio management solution and roll that up in context of an overall product or product line or portfolio. And this happens seamlessly without the end user having to worry about remembering to sync these things, the way our connector technology is designed to work and with one connector. So on top of just synchronizing data, one plan is designed, yes, you can use it directly in your browser. That's the way many people use it. But if you're working in context of other tools, be able to surface and use one plan within the context of, say, Microsoft Power Apps, or Teams is very popular because one plan isn't authorized Microsoft Teams application. You can access it within the context of your use of Teams. But in the context of our discussion today, Not only do we integrate with Azure DevOps data, you can actually access the OnePlan capabilities directly from in Azure DevOps while you're working in Azure DevOps. And the same holds true within Jira. We have those capabilities. Some folks, use Microsoft Dynamics or SharePoint as well. But the key here is if you have the need, you can stay working in the tools that you work in every day, not do all that task and context switching, and get the benefits of OnePlan while you're working in your tool of choice. So with that, I will go to a demonstration. So in the context of a portfolio, we can structure a product portfolio in any way you like. We have the concept of plan types in here. In this case, I've got our product lines and our products as a hierarchy within here, and the different product lines and products are over here. So I'm looking at a view which is called a product summary in here, and this one is grouped and summarized by the different product lines and then the products within those product lines. If you'll notice, we have views that have different KPIs that might be available to you, red, yellow, greens, and you can decide on what data points you'd like to have in any particular view. In these list views, you can have a variety of perspectives that you might want. Like, for example, if I wanted to change the view of this to something by product by category, and I might have different categories of products that are a different overlay rather than product line. And if I expand this out, I can look at this in a different context, even with different data points, like, for example, what process step we're in, or who's the lead, or what business unit we're doing this for or within. And we can actually, at any given point in time, add whatever columns of data that OnePlan provides or any custom columns that you provide, and select those and add those into the mix simply by drag and dropping and adding those into the mix. So the perspectives that we have on a portfolio and organizing it into a more product-oriented context is very simple within OnePlan. We could also look at these things from a board perspective. And if I go into a board and say, maybe look at a product board by product line, here I'm looking at different product lines in different columns and maybe different product line budgets here. And we can actually compare with the overall budgets that are rolling up from the things that we're looking at doing within each of those product lines. And if we have any backlog items, we can actually drag those in from a backlog into the different mixes as we try to prioritize these things in a more graphical way. We can even put swim lanes in here, for example, and if we were going to overlay something, I don't know, like a business unit, where we can see what business units we're doing these different things for within these different product lines, and even the different relationships that we might have or associations that we might have between these, as well as even grabbing the data from any one of these things. For example, if this one's going red and I want to look at the details around that, I can pick up a quick edit of all the details that we have around this particular product right here, and I can go into things like even relationships that we're dealing with in there very quickly as I navigate through this board. And as I mentioned earlier on, we have roadmap views that allow us to look at things from a variety of different roadmap perspectives. So for example, if I was going to look at this by a roadmap by, say, product line, here now I've got a roadmap that's just rendered automatically based on the categorization that I want to choose by this, because I can choose whichever one I want. I have the status color by the status, and I'm actually elevating key dates from the actual plan itself, so I can see where the different releases are intended to happen, et cetera, within the context of this particular roadmap. Once again, a very flexible way to deliver that. Now, if I was going to drill into a specific element here, from wherever I'm at, whether I'm in a list view, a board view, or roadmap view, I can actually drill in, and I can maybe update and do a quick edit from here, just like I did before. Or if I want to, I could drill in and drill directly into the item itself. And let's just say I wanted to go to the details around this particular item. We can capture and context the data that we want to see about any given product item within our product portfolio. Here I've got the life cycle of the product development. I've got some metadata to categorize that. I've got a product description. I've got a product vision matrix in here with vision and mission and strengths and weaknesses, opportunities and threats. And we're going to talk a little bit about ideas and requests that we can bring over, that this may come over from that stage and just carry this forward to keep evolving as we're executing on this particular product. And as we drill down, there's current metrics on how we prioritize this product, where we're at on the timeline, how we're doing on the financials, what our KPIs are on that. And then the associations I talked about, for example, about what ideas do we have coming down the pike, for example, that might be associated with this particular product? What existing product initiatives are out there that we're working on that might be relevant to what we're working on for this particular product line? And even strategies and objectives and key results that we might be aligned with, or business capabilities that have to be addressed in order to support this success of this product line. And even other associations, like things like competitors and personas that are working on this, are all things that we can have associated in this mix. Now, from a work plan perspective within here, as I go in to look at work plans, this is where some of the flexibility happens as far as work items and managing different dimensions of this. We have the concept of a backlog here. And the backlog, much like we had plan types within our portfolio, we have different work types in here. And this backlog work type is where we would tend to put the backlog of what we'd be working on for this particular product. And in this agile approach, we've got features that we're doing, and we have different user stories that we have within those. Now, we could build this right here in one plan directly. We have that capability in here. Or if you choose, and I'll show you some examples a little later on in this demonstration, we can choose to bring that backlog data in from either Azure DevOps or Jira at this point and have it just synchronize what we're working on over there. And I'll show you some examples of that in a little bit. In this case, we can also do things like sprint planning. As we come in and we look at, say show sprints, we can go in here and say, show me the sprints that we're working on and see what backlog items are associated with those sprints and allocate those things within our constraints of points and or hours that we're working on. So once again, a fully agile approach to this in working with our work plan. On top of that, we have a schedule work type where from a waterfall perspective, you could manage this thing completely in a waterfall fashion if you like, or we could basically manage this in a way such that on top of the backlogs we're working on, we can communicate to leadership and to others in our organization the release plan and when the releases are going to happen and the different things that have to happen from a waterfall fashion in those releases, and we can communicate to our customers and to our leadership when those key dates are. And once again, these are some of the items that we elevated into that roadmap timeline as those diamonds on those roadmap bars. On top of that, we can also track things like issues and risks. We talked about managing risk effectively and be able to capture a risk log in here and be able to manage issues, risks, changes, and key decisions all in one place because there are different work types within here. We can go in here at any given point in time and let me look at the quick edit on this particular risk where I can characterize the risk, look at its probability and impact, and even potentially plan out some narrative on some mitigation or contingency plans on those things as well. So once again, comprehensive way to manage different dimensions of the work elements associated with this particular product. We can also come in here and look at the resource planning. On the resource capacity planning side, we can figure out whether or not we're over and under allocated in a lot of ways. Now here I've got some generic assignments and named individuals. And I'm planning here, I'm looking at it in terms of hours, but I can also look at these things and plan at it in terms of FTEs or percentages of allocation. On top of that, I can also see that even though we're only looking at using Ehrlich maybe almost a quarter of his time here in this particular product, we can see here that he has other things in there that are giving him an over allocation. And we can even do things like evaluate alternatives here, like for example, look at candidates. And if we were looking at, say, maybe finding an alternative to Ehrlich and maybe find somebody that's less allocated, I could maybe find some good matches for candidates in here and see if somebody else could be replaced, could replace Ehrlich in here to do something more reasonable as far as making that happen. So once again, total resource management, we'll talk about an overall resource plan outside of just a singular product a little bit later on. And also financial tracking we talked about. In here, you can actually track things like your labor costs, which can come in directly from your resource plan and the rates associated with those resources. And even tracking other types of things like procured costs, like things like materials and supplies and contracting costs and things like that, be able to track those financials across the way. And then we talked about reporting and the interrelations and visualizations. As we look at a product like this, we can very quickly see that this Xbox product has some successors that are dependent on it. And in overall relationships in a runway, we can see that this Xbox next gen product actually has some projects and epics being worked on other places in the organization that are related to it and associated with it. We can also see that there's some strategic key results that leadership is looking for that are associated with this, that these things are going to contribute to the success of those. And these are the objectives that those key results are associated with. So we can also see how we fit into the overall picture and how we're related to what leadership wants at a higher level. Now, all of this, rolls up to the overall product portfolio. And if I go back to, just an overall list view here, within this product portfolio, one of the things that you can see on the left-hand side is whether or not these things are associated or connected to other tools. And in this case, some of them you can see are connected to Azure DevOps, some are connected to Jira, some are not connected to anything at all, meaning that particular product is being managed wholly within one plan. But if I was going to look at an Azure DevOps example, for example, on this, I might drill into the ergonomic keyboards one here that has an Azure DevOps relationship to that. Now I could drill into it right from here, but just to put it in context, I'm going to go into the work plan itself, where we're going to be synchronizing into the backlog for this. Now, as I look here, we have a backlog in this particular case, and as opposed to the first example I showed you where we actually built it in one plan, this one is actually connected to Azure DevOps. And so it's synchronizing on a routine basis, on a scheduled basis, the details that are in the backlog in Azure DevOps with this backlog view that you see here in one plan. If I go to open the item and I go to look into here and I go, it'll take me directly to this particular product, which is defined as an epic over here in Azure DevOps. And the items or the backlog items are the children, and the children of those children that we decide through the connector to map over is what's basically coming back over to one plan. So as I go back to one plan and I look at the things that are in here, these are all being derived from Azure DevOps, and we can configure the connector to determine what data points you want to bring in. In this case, this particular view is showing effort, it's showing story points that they exist, what resources are assigned, what team it's on, what sprint they're associated with, and once again, the sprint planning view that I showed you earlier on can be bringing in that data from Azure DevOps itself. The other key here is that you can access the one plan capabilities right here within Azure DevOps, such that you don't have to leave Azure DevOps in order to make that happen. So for example, if I come in here and I want to look at the specific one plan data regarding this particular epic, I can get that information here and not leave Azure DevOps in order to get there. So for example, if I have access to one plan in the portfolio capabilities, the additional portfolio management details that I showed you in the detail pages is all relevant here, whether it be the work plan that's in here, and I can see the things that are synchronized over there, the overall resource plan, etc. Those are all things that we can gather from here and actually work through that right here from within Azure DevOps. Now, as we go back to one plan, that same scenario actually holds true, within Jira as well. So if I go look at a particular plan, in this case for Jira, I'll look at the live chat headset. And if I want to drill into that, what I'll see is, and I'll just kind of do the same thing, I'll go into the work plan for that one, and it'll have a backlog, just like the Azure DevOps related plan did. And this particular backlog is a little more simple, only a few items in here. And these are stories that are coming over from there. And if I look at the connection that's there, I can see it's connected to Jira. And when I go to open that item, it's going to take me to the item in Jira. And in this particular case, here is the product, and it's the live chat headset, and there's only the 3 backlog items or child issues that are in here at the moment, but that is what's synchronizing. And just like in Azure DevOps, we can access the one plan capabilities from in here. And as you can see, it's an app that's associated, that's been installed right here within Jira. So the same use case applies with Jira, and it all feeds back into the one plan data that in turn rolls up to the entire portfolio. Now, if we take this back a little bit further, we talked about ideas and intake. One of the things, if we go a little farther upstream, we can look at ideas that are to be considered early on in their life cycle. And if we, go into look at this, you can see there's a number of ideas that are already in here. Since we're talking about, an Xbox, related examples here, there might be more Xbox exclusive games where you might establish the details around that, and you might have an approval life cycle for the idea, and you may want to capture the data that you want. Now, these forms, both in the product area and here, are completely configurable for you. We have templates to get you started, but the key is the data that you capture, the way you prioritize, and the score that you generate, whether it be a more agile scoring or WSJF or a prioritization method that of your choice. The idea is that when you capture that information, you go through an approval process and finally approve this idea. When you do, this idea can then be promoted by what we call a reorganize, and take this idea and promote it into a product that we would like to work on, or a project that we would like to work on, and carry forth all that data that we captured in the evaluation of this, and not lose that and have to transcribe that into a different system. Meaning end to end, we have this fluent flow all the way from the outset of the idea all the way through the execution and its conclusion. Now, we talked about strategy, and OnePlan does have that strategic execution piece. So how do we get those relations in here? Well, if we look at the fact that we have, objectives and key results that have been built in here by leadership. And one of them, for example, might be launch new products successfully. And in that one, we might establish some goals. We might want to put some schedules in there. We might want to talk about what the metric is, right, that we want to have, and have those financials around that, and the associations to what we have called as key results. And in these key results, which are the tangible measures as to whether or not we're actually making progress towards making that launch new product successfully, one of them might be, win the best product of the year. And in that particular case, we have, metrics in here and target numbers that we're trying to go to. And those metrics could be dollars, they could be numbers, they could be other metrics. And the idea here is there are then initiatives and products that are associated with it. And of course, the Xbox product is associated with this as we look through that strategy. So those associations are all here. And that's how, when we look at the visualization that we have with the relationships, these are the associations that are created within OnePlan, so we can factor in all the things that are related to what we're doing as we make our decisions. Now, we also have an overall resource plan. I showed you earlier on a resource plan just for one individual project, or product, I should say. And as we look at this, I can look at the resources in a variety of ways. In this case, I'm showing it by business unit. And if I go into our product development sphere and look at about how we're looking on resources in there, I can plan in terms of hours or FTEs and such. But in this case, let me just switch over to an FTE view. And here I can see, for example, where a Jack Barker is, very overloaded in this resource plan. And why is he overloaded? It's because I have him on all these efforts simultaneously within here. At some points, I have them over double booked, more than double booked in any particular period. And this is where I may need to find, some suitable replacements for him. For example, if I wanted to get him off of this particular effort and I wanted to find alternate candidates for him and find best matches for that, I may have to look at other alternatives here to do substitutions and replace him for that, but you have the visibility on the remaining availability of other people that might be alternatives to bring him on here. So once again, that resource management dimension is in here. I also mentioned the fact that we can do what if scenarios. If we take all this and we build our planning and we look at, we have to make adjustments, so we have to adjust to changing conditions out there, we can set up new models in here. Notice that I have different model groups in here where I have product development, I have a PMO set of models, I have an innovation group, I have a strategy realization group. Each of them can have their own models. And as you do that and you go to create new models, you can determine the criteria for the model. You can determine what plans by criteria that you'd like to have into the model, right? You can go back and decide what fields of data you want to use as constraints within that model. And you can determine what cost types you want to use for resource information within that model as well. The idea is to pick a selection of efforts or plan types that you might want in here, include them in your model, figure out your constraints and your targets, and then work within those and to figure out the alternatives. So I'm going to just go to one that's already been created in the interest of time today. And in here, I can see that in this model, we may want to consider in this scenario a bunch of different products that we're looking at doing. Some are both active and some are proposed, and some are on hold. And within that, I have to make determinations of what my targets are. Now, to cut to the chase on this a little bit, I might look at a scenario whereby, I decided that my limit was a $58 million budget, and in that constraint, through the selection of projects, I found out that I could only do 7 of those 10 projects to fit within the overall budget that I was looking for. As I go look at something like that, and I look at the budgets here, whether or not it fits within the context of that particular budget, whether it fits in there is something that I can look at as I select or deselect projects. It's going to show whether or not what the model has, what is in and out, and what fits into that as I work on through this. If I want to look at it from a resource constraint perspective, it's going to tell me, do I have the resources to do what's selected here in this particular model? Okay, so I can look at that through a selection or deselection process till certain things fit within here. I can also come in here, and if I put in a Gantt chart type of view in here, and let me zoom out a little bit, I can maybe determine on some proposed things, maybe to make this fit within a constraint. It's not whether or not I do it or not. Maybe I put it into the mix, but maybe I say, what if I now delay this out a couple quarters and look at how that impacts it effectively? It'll dynamically change either the financials or the resources down below as I'm trying to come up with a model target. And as I come in here, I can continually save different scenarios in here and evaluate alternatives, which isn't impacting the core data within here. It's basically just giving us these alternatives, which we can implement after we review with others that we have to review those things. Now, as I come in here and I look at a combination of things, I can analyze different alternatives together. So if I come in here and I want to analyze the different scenarios together, the $68 million and the $58 million budget, here I can see that the targets I set for each of those are here. And then here I can see what is in the scenario that I have in that $68 million budget. It's showing that I'm spending $68 million instead of $58 million. But it says for that additional $10 million, I might get $13 million more in benefit if I can get that higher budget rather than that lower budget. So it's worthwhile for me to make that investment potentially. I could also look at some details around this. So for example, I could come in here and compare the $68 million budget with the $58 million budget and compare them and look at what projects are in, what's out, and how priorities may change depending on the mix of the projects that are in each of those scenarios. I could even look at an overall dashboard on here and just look at comparing these scenarios. I can compare the two, for example, and more graphically, I can compare, which alternative provides me what in those regards. So those are some details I can provide around that. Now, as I look in here, I can also look at things like some of those relationships I talked about earlier on. So I look at the selected plans that are in this model, and I look at, say, for example, the dependencies or the runway. I can see the products that would be in here, and I can see very quickly what other projects might be going on in the organization, what objectives and key results are associated with those products, so I can make a good decision based on the context of all the things that are being impacted or all the things that need to be factored in. And on top of that, we have charting. So if I wanted to look at a bubble chart down below, I can actually look at these things and say, oh, I don't know, maybe let me make one of them, one of the axes is on here, prioritization score. And then maybe the other axis I could make to be benefits. And maybe the size of the bubble would be the budget. And now as I look at something like that and decide if I want to show plans that are also out or not, you'll see here that my sweet spot would probably be high benefit and high prioritization. And to be quite honest, in this model right now, I don't have anything that's in the sweet spot. And I can see that the biggest budget item that I have right now is high in benefits, but seems to be lower in priority. But the idea is that this will map out for us and show us in a traditional bubble chart where things fit from whatever axes that we want to show here in this overall model. Now, just from a reporting perspective, if I go back out to our product portfolio, and I want to go out here and show some reporting around that, we feed not only all these different views that you have in here, but we have an OData feed that feeds a robust set of Power BI reports, which you can add to or modify the ones that we provide you. But the key here is the things that you want to report on are readily available to even non-OnePlan users directly in OnePlan, in Power BI. So for example, evaluating the context of ideas that we have, or going in and looking at things like a resource dashboard, for example, on how we're doing from a resource perspective, be able to slice by different resource types or roles and such in that regard. Or even just looking at our overall portfolio data and portfolio of, say, products or product lines, et cetera, and looking how the reporting on that is going and drilling into different factors on that is all readily available to us. So we have preconceived reports for you that you can start with from day one. So with that, I think what I'll do is I will go back to our presentation and summarize and talk about some potential next steps you can take. So in summarization, we talked about how organizations are shifting orientation from project to more product focus to address modern challenges, and that product portfolio management is an important discipline for organizations to adopt to succeed in that new arena, and that OnePlan provides solutions, capabilities for product and strategical portfolio management needs. OnePlan can support a variety of execution methodologies and frameworks and has the most complete set of portfolio management capabilities on the Microsoft platform. Now, we also integrate with other tools and solutions, as we showed you today, and with Microsoft Teams for content and collaboration, which we really didn't focus on, but it is there. And Azure DevOps and Jira are popular tools for agile execution, and OnePlan incorporates their use. Now, we focus on this portfolio management discipline, and that is our focus. And Microsoft recognizes us as their project and portfolio management global partner of the year on an annual basis. And we're proud to say that we get recognized by the analysts like Gartner and Infotech Research for the same. And if you want to trial this, we have a number of different templates out there, including a product portfolio management template that's available to trial, and you can trial it with data. And we're happy to assist you on that if you like, but you go to oneplan.ai/solutions, or up on Microsoft App Source, you can get a free trial for yourself. Also, for those Jira folks out there, we are on the Atlassian Marketplace, and if you search on OnePlan, you'll find our OnePlan app for Jira out there. If you're not ready to trial yet and you want to understand a little bit more about what it takes to get into a solution like this, we're happy to engage with you on a free roadmap workshop to help you review your current use of tools and assess your requirements and the desired future state you'd like to get to, and really kind of help you gauge what it's going to take to get there, both from the steps you'd have to go through and whatever total cost of it would be on that. And you may already own a bunch of the technology that is needed here, so it might just be an incremental investment on your part. So the next steps would be a free trial if you want it, a roadmap workshop, or if you're not ready for any of that, if this high-level generalized demo that I gave today is just kind of whetting your appetite, please engage with us and we'll give you a personalized one-on-one demo that addresses your specific needs and focal points. You can reach out to us at contact@oneplan.ai, or just research us yourself more at www.oneplan.ai. At this point, I'd just like to thank you for taking time out of your busy day and your valuable time. And if you'd like to reach out to me directly for any reason, there's my contact information. You will be getting a copy of these slides, so all this information will be in there for you. And I would just say OnePlan is really focused on what we call the power of one, bringing everything together in one user experience into one solution, irrespective of whether or not you have other execution tools involved like Jira and Azure DevOps. So our goal is to really provide you that one interface and that one experience through OnePlan. Thank you again, and we really do hope to engage with you. Let us know how we can help.